Okay, guys, so we've not touched on anything called poetry before. Okay, what do we think poetry is? Have we heard of it? Do we know anything about it? I want you guys to talk amongst your partner. See what you think poetry is. It is kind of like a song. You're right. Older. Yeah, we don't hear poetry much anymore, you know. But it is still a part of an important type of writing, okay? So I'm going to read you a poem. You guys all have a copy of it, and I'll put it up here on the tablet and show you guys. It's called I Wonder. Okay? I wonder how the world would be if I could see the way you see. Would I love it less or hate it more? Could I go back to the way I was before? Now, is it a story? On our chart, it says a poem is a collection of words written to inspire ideas, imagination, or emotion. Okay, I want you guys to highlight those three things. Inspire ideas, imagination, or emotion. Those are the three big things that you're going to hear a lot in poetry. Can they be a story? Completely. But it usually has a little bit more to it than just being a story, right? It's thoughts, it's ideas. It seems a little deeper, right? A little more meaningful than just a story. So we'll go into, today in our next lessons, we'll go in a little bit to that meaning and what that all entails. But before we do that, I want to get into the structure. Now, what's structure? How things are set up, right? The order, the layout, all of that, right? Now, when we think of the stories we read now, or the books, and we think of structure, we think of paragraphs, we think of complete sentences, maybe even chapters, titles, main idea headings, that kind of stuff, right? Poetry structure is a little different. We're going to learn some new words that has to do with poetry, okay? The first one I want to talk about is a verse or a stanza. Stanza. Have we heard of that word? If you're in music, you might have heard that word before, but stanza and verse are kind of the same thing. We're gonna refer to it as a stanza, okay? Now later down the line, you might see it referred to as a verse, but for this lesson and for the stuff we do for reading this week, we're gonna call it a stanza, okay? So turn to your page. I'm pulling up. It looks like this has a red barn on it. It says, a stanza is a group of lines in a poem. Now let's read this poem, and then we're going to talk about the different stanzas in it and why they're important and why we even think an author would put a stanza in and divide them like that, okay? So, a happy child. My house is red, a little house. A happy child am I. I laugh and play the whole day long. I hardly ever cry. I have a tree, a green, green tree, to shade me from the sun, and under it I often sit when all my play is done. Now, if you can see, I've already added on this slide, your papers won't have them, but I want you to add them. These are called brackets, okay? And I wrote stanza by them. Now, why do we think a poem may be broken up into stanzas? What do you think? It's going to give us order, okay? Maybe we're going to talk about, up here he's talking about our little red house, but down here he's talking about a green tree, right? Would it make sense to just throw all that stuff together? You could, but the meaning might not be as strong, right? And it might not look as good, right? And it might not sound as good when you're reading it. So I want you guys to take your red pen and go ahead and draw. If you can't draw these fancy brackets, just draw a little half circle or a hook around them. Okay, and you're going to write stanza 1, stanza 2. Okay? Does that make sense? And like I said, they could be called a verse. In song lyrics, they would be called a verse, right? But in poetry, we're going to call them stanzas. And if you're ever in music, you might hear that as well. Okay? So we do this because it's going to give us order, right? It's almost like a paragraph in a story or in any type of writing. Each paragraph is going to talk about something different. Okay? Now in poetry, each stanza is going to be a little different topic or different ideas that tell us more about what the poem is trying to tell us, right? Okay, so there's also lines in poetry. Now that's a pretty simple word. And it's a simple definition. We're going to go back to the page. Actually, it's the page after this. Nope. Right here. It has a blue box on it. Lines. So a line is a single row of words in a poem. So let's read this poem and see if we can find the lines, okay? You guys have this on your page. I eat peas with honey. Kind of a silly poem, but let's go ahead and read it and see what it says. I eat peas with honey. I've done it all my life. It makes the peas taste funny, but it keeps them on the knife. Now, this poem has 4 lines. If we look at it, is there more than one stanza? You can always tell a stanza because you're going to have extra space between the big chunks of lines, right? So this right here, I want you to put an arrow towards it and put line 1 because that's what it is. It's a line. It says, I eat peas with honey. That's all it's telling us in the line. Now, the reason the poetry has lines is because we don't necessarily always have to have full sentences in poetry. And I know that sounds silly because we tell you guys over and over again, you always have to have complete sentences in your writing, okay? But poetry's a little different and you get to break the rules a little bit, okay? You get to have a single line. Now here we have a semicolon. Here we do have a period, and here we have a comma. We're not even going to get into how you punctuate poetry quite yet. But I want you guys to realize that each line is usually a complete thought, kind of like a sentence is a complete thought, okay? So far we've learned stanzas, which are groups, or almost like a paragraph, right? And we've learned lines, okay? Stanzas have lines, right? Is there a set number? No. No. Is there a set length that it has to be considered a line? No. It just depends on the setup of your poem. Okay? That's the really cool thing about poetry. Poetry is kind of like an art. You kind of get to do what you want and break the rules of writing a little bit, right? To express feeling and inspire ideas, right? Those 3 things that we underline on our first page are definition of a poem, right? So I want to go into next something called rhythm and meter. Now this is kind of what makes a poem a lot different from regular writing. When we read regular writing, we have sentences, and we know that when we see punctuation at the end of a sentence, we stop or we pause. Then we go on to the next sentence because they're complete thoughts, right? Now when you read poetry, or when you hear somebody read poetry, there's a kind of a rhythm to it. It almost has a song-like aspect to it, right? That's why a lot of times people say songs are a lot like poetry. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk to you about is meter. Actually, we're going to do rhyme. Now, not all poetry has rhyming, but a lot of it does. If you can see here, rhyme describes words that have the same ending sounds. We all know what rhymes are. We've been doing that probably since preschool or kindergarten, right? Cat, hat, dog, log. Not all poetry has rhymes, but a lot of it does. And a lot of the poetry we're going to talk about will have rhymes. Okay, so we notice that a lot of times it says, as I was going up the stair, I met a man who wasn't there. So those 2 ending words rhyme. The next lines say, he wasn't there again today. Oh, how I wish he'd go away. Now, today and away, the whole word doesn't rhyme, but the ending of it does, right? And that's how the end of the line rhymes. Now, why would we put rhymes in a poem? What do we think? It's going to contribute to our rhythm and meter. Now, we've been learning about meter in math, but it's not that kind of meter, okay? We're going to go on. Let me pull up the page for you. Right here, it says a little seed. Now, we've been learning about seeds in science, so this goes along perfectly. Okay, I'll read the poem to you, and then we'll talk about what rhythm is. A little seed for me to sow, a little earth to make it grow, a little hole, a little pat, a little wish, and that is that. A little sun, a little shower, and in a while a little flower. Now, do you notice when I read that I didn't say, a little seed for me to sow, a little earth for make it grow, a little hole to pat, a little hole to... No, I read it kind of in a rhythm, or like a song, right? So rhythm is the beat and feel of a poem. So think about this. If this was a song, what rhythm would you set it to? Would it be really upbeat? It probably wouldn't be sad. If we're talking about something growing, do you think it'd be a sad rhythm? No, it'd probably be an upbeat one. So let's read it again. A little seed for me to sow, a little earth to make it grow, a hole, a pat, a little wish, and that is that. A little sun, a little shower, and in a while, a little flower. So see how we read it in a rhythm? And that's going to come with the more skilled readers we get, right? I've been reading for a long time, so I can usually read with rhythm. I don't expect you guys to be able to do that right away. It's going to take some practice for us to be able to read with rhythm. So right now, I want you guys to pair up with your partners that we've already decided and read this A Little Seed poem and try to read it in a rhythm, okay? It doesn't have to be the same rhythm I read it in. Not at all. I want you to read it in the rhythm you think that it should be read in. So go ahead and do that with your partner right now, okay? How'd we do? It's kind of hard at first, right? We'll get there, right? So now I want to move on to meter. Now, it's not a measurement at all, okay? It's something different. It's really fun. This is fun. I like figuring out meter of a poem, okay? So a meter of a poem is the number and style of accented syllables in a line. It is written in a repeated pattern. So we talked about syllables and spelling a little bit at the beginning of the year. A syllable, right? Like the word weather, weather, right? Two syllables. The word dog is one syllable, okay? The word exercise, exercise. You guys clap it out with me. Exercise. Okay? Those are syllables. We know what syllables are. We've been working with them for a couple of years now since we've learned to be reading and writing. Okay? So meter has to do with syllables and what we put accent on. Now, what does that mean? Yeah, stress. We call it stress too. We stress that sound in a word. So when we say the word weather, we say weather. We don't say weather, right? We stress the beginning of that sound. Okay? Poems really rely on this. They really, the structure of a poem really relies on this number of syllables and how we stress those syllables, okay? Because it makes it, you're right, it makes it sound good, right? And we talked about poetry is about sounding good and being fluent. It's a piece of art, okay? So we're going to read this. You guys know Hickory Dickory Dock. It's a real old nursery rhyme, and I'm sure you know what it is. So we're going to read it. Hickory Dickory Dock, the mouse ran up the clock. The clock struck 1, the mouse ran down, hickory dickory dock. Okay, we're going to do something fun now. We're going to clap it out. Okay? Hickory dickory dock, the mouse ran up the clock. The clock struck 1, the mouse ran down. Hickory dickory dock. Does that make sense? Kind of fun, right? I want you guys to turn with your partner and pull up your little seed poem that we just talked about and try to clap it out. Okay, try to clap it out and see if you can figure out what the meter will kind of be like. Okay? Eventually we'll talk about what different types of meters poems can have. But right now I want you to just understand that it's the syllables and how we accent or stress them, right? And you can figure that out by clapping it, right? Give it a try with your friends, okay? Now, how'd it go? Do we think we can do it? I want to talk about 2 more things before we wrap it up. And I know this is a lot of information, but we're going to be working on it all week. This is just our introduction to poetry, right? So we talked about how poetry usually is more than just a story. Okay, it has lots of different meaning and stuff. Now we know the word theme when we talk about other things we've read, right? Our theme is what we're talking about, what we're trying to get out of the story. Okay, now turn to this page right here. Okay, and it says, a theme of a poem is a truth, lesson, or message about life. Right? We said a lot of poems are more than just a story. So go ahead and read this. My people. You are my people. You know me. You see me. You hear me. You surround me. You don't laugh at me. You don't gossip about me. You don't leave me. You don't judge me. You always listen. You always wait. You always trust. You always stay. You are my people. Okay? So that's how we're going to end today, is thinking about a theme. Here, what do you think it is? Friendship, acceptance, love. What do you guys think? Okay. Now, our task for today is for you guys to get with your partner, and I'm going to give you 2 different poems and a list of what to do, and you'll have this packet to help you. You're going to bracket the stanzas, label the lines, and then I want you to read them and try to find any rhyming words, and I want you to clap out the rhythm and meters and stuff with your friend, okay? And I'm going to be walking around helping you guys, and we'll see how that goes, okay? And like I said, we're just getting started with poetry. I don't expect you to be experts because I'm not an expert, okay? We're going to learn together, and we're going to build on it, and we're going to learn a lot about poetry, and I hope you guys really like it because I love poetry. Sound good? Okay, go off with your pairs, and I'll come around and check on you.